Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Complete Works. I'm your host, Doug S. And on this edition of the Complete Works, we're going to be reviewing the movie starring Nicolas Cage, 211. And first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Complete Works. Now, if you're tuning in for the first time and you're not familiar how we do things here on the Complete Works, first let me just say that each week, we're going to be reviewing a different movie where we're looking at a specific movie from a film actor, actress, director, or composer, and we're looking every week at a different movie in their career. Like I mentioned, we're looking to the film career or history, if you will, of Nicolas Cage. 211 is a movie we're going to be reviewing this week on the Complete Works. So welcome aboard and sit back. I think you're going to love this edition of the Complete Works. Now, if you'd like to find more about the Complete Works podcast, you can go to film-book. Again, that's film-book.com. film-book.com by using the search term The Complete Works. You can also email us at podcast@film-book.com. Again, that's podcast@film-book.com with Complete Works in the subject line, or you can put 211 in there. Whatever you would like to say, Nicolas Cage, etc. And if you like what you're hearing on this podcast, please hit the subscription button. That way, every time there's a new edition or a new release of a film being reviewed, it can be sent right to your inbox out there. Now, as we do every week with the Complete Works, before we jump into the actual review of the movie or any thoughts that I might have on it, I like to do a little bit of trivia, tell you a little bit about the cast, maybe some box office success, and then we'll jump right into the storyline, give you a complete review of the movie, and then give you my thoughts at the very end of it. So we're reviewing the movie 211, starring Nicolas Cage. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with 211, it means robbery in progress. So as you can imagine, this is going to be about a heist or cops, and Nicolas Cage plays Mike Chandler in this. But before we get into that, let's look at some of the trivia in this. So Nicolas Cage actually broke his ankle while filming this movie and resulting in being out of action for about 2 weeks. So he wasn't able to film for about 2 weeks. Now, I would also say Nicolas Cage wasn't very pleased with this. He actually described the movie as being disappointing. So when he saw the final cut and the screening, he was actually very disappointed in this version of the movie. And like I said, he admitted that he didn't like the final cut in that. So this is the third collaboration between Nicolas Cage and his son, Weston. So Weston Cage is in here, Weston Cage is in the movie. He plays Luke in the movie in terms. Now, at the very end, where you see the credits rolling, at the very end, you will notice that the word vice principal is misspelled or is incorrectly spelled. And then finally, I would say that this is the sixth collaboration between Nicolas Cage and Millennium Films. He was in The Wicker Man in 2006, Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans in 2009, Drive Angry in 2011, Trespass in 2011, and Stolen in 2012. So like I said, this makes the sixth collaboration with Millennium Films and Nicolas Cage. It was originally scheduled to a theatrical release on the 14th of June 2018 in the Netherlands, but it was pulled away from being scheduled or released, and it actually was released direct to disc instead on the 28th of July 2018. Now, some of you are probably going to ask whether or not this is actually a true story 211, and the answer is yes and no. Okay, 211 is loosely based on a bloody 1997 North Hollywood bank robbery in which some criminals outgunned the cops with fully automatic weapons. Yet, this particular film, 211, is set in a present-day, made-up fictional city in Massachusetts, Chesterfield, Massachusetts, actually, and that's how the film is. So, like so many things that Hollywood does, they take a true story, and I use that word loosely, and they kind of ad lib and have a little fun with it. And so, loosely based on a true story in terms of that. So let's look at the cast who's in this film. Obviously, Nicolas Cage, he is playing Mike Chandler. Sophie Skeleton is also in here. She plays Lisa. Michael Rainey Jr. plays Kenny. Dwayne Cameron plays Steve. And like I said, Weston Cage Coppola plays Luke, which is actually Nicolas Cage's son. And this makes their third collaboration together. I did some research about the box office circulation worldwide gross. It made a little over $1 million. I did not get a sense, unfortunately, of how much it cost to make. My guess is it was a little more than $1 million. My guess is probably somewhere around 5 million in that ballpark. But nevertheless, most of the money, it looks like, a lot of it came internationally as well. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of the box office breakdown, but at the time that I was able to pull this information, it looked like most of it was overseas. In terms of that, it did have a little bit of DVD sales and Blu-ray sales, which domestically, internationally, put it around $2 million overall, but it looks like the most of it came from overseas. The length of this film runs about approximately 86 minutes in length. In terms of that, so let me jump right into the storyline / plot, and then we'll wrap it up with my review of the film. So, like I said earlier, Nicolas Cage was not very pleased. He didn't like the final cut or version of this film, but let's jump in and see what we have. So, storyline, a quick summary is we have a routine patrol with an aging cop, his partner, and their ride along get caught in a standoff with some criminals robbing a bank, hence the word or the title of the movie 211, meaning robbery in progress. Okay, so what's the plot? So what happens is we start off in Afghanistan. We have a disgruntled mercenary corners a mob boss who owes them money. Under torture, he discloses that he has been wired to various banks, including one in Chesterton, Massachusetts, some money. So in a Kabul market, Interpol agent Rosie operation is to catch an antique smuggler that is entrapped, and she is redirected to the crime scene caused by the mercenaries. So we're in Afghanistan where the movie starts. Fast forward to Chesterfield, Massachusetts. Remember, Chesterton is not a real town. It was a made-up town for this movie. And we have Kenny. He's a quiet high school student. He has an altercation with some bullies. And so the school vice principal tells Shawnee, who is Kenny's mother, that he must go to or be involved in a police ride-along, or he's going to face expulsion for school. So guess what happens? Mom agrees that Kenny needs to be in this ride-along so he doesn't get expelled. Meanwhile, we have the Agent Rossi. She asks a gun store manager for information on the mercenaries, and at that time, she receives an address to a warehouse. So we have Patrolman Mike Chandler, played by Nicolas Cage. He is somebody that has just lost his wife of 30 years to cancer. So he is having some difficulties, as you can imagine, expressing his emotions, and has a strained relationship with his daughter, Lisa. And so Mike is on patrol and has his partner and his son-in-law, Steve. Steve reveals to Mike that Mike's daughter, Lisa, is pregnant. Okay. So we go to the bank, and that's when we have an armored cash transport delivers roughly about 1.3 million that we learn. And so then we have the bad guys, the mercenaries, Trey, Rob, and Luke finalize their heist plan while Hyde plants a cell phone IED in a restaurant. Okay, so setting the plot up. Mike and Steve, they're on this ride along, and they arrive at work. And so they find out that Kenny is going to be, and he's the quiet high school student, he's going to be signing papers allowing him to go on this ride along with Steve and Mike. And so they're on this ride along and they start responding to a call from headquarters. Steve and Mike then draw their weapons on a suspect, and Kenny, the high school student, records all this on his phone or his smartphone. Okay. So then we go to the bank, and that's when the crew storms the bank. And as you can imagine, as in every movie, the robbers threaten everybody in the room. Near the bank, Steve goes for coffee while Mike and Kenny discuss the school altercation that Kenny had with the bullies. So, gaining insight, Mike changes his mind regarding Kenny, admitting that he would have acted very similar to how Kenny reacted to the bullies. Steve returns with the coffee. Mike indicates that there's a suspicious black Escalade parked in the red zone outside the bank, place that they shouldn't be parked at. They cross a parking lot then to investigate, and they find out inside what's going on. Trey then orders Hyde to make the call. So when the call goes out, and Trey and Hyde are the two of the bank robbers, the IED destroys a restaurant. Okay, it goes off and they have this big explosion. So back at police headquarters, obviously there's an alert that goes out, letting everybody knows that there's been an explosion in a restaurant. Mike chooses to remain because of Kenny and the less dangerous parking violation. Hyde becomes aggravated, and the other patrol convey on the restaurant, and the news reaches the hospital where Shawnee, Kenny's mother, prepares to receive multiple casualties. Okay, hearing of the news, Rosie diverts to Chesterfield, Massachusetts, and remember, Rosie is the Interpol agent. And first responders arrive. SWAT captain then issues orders at that point. Okay, so Hyde, one of the bank robbers, opens fire on the cruiser as Mike takes evasive action. Steve alerts headquarters that they are taking fire, they're under heavy fire. Some officers leave the restaurant area to provide backup for Mike and Steve. Mike crashes a cruiser and gets out, returning fire immediately. He's instantly trapped. Steve manages to free himself, and then Kenny then grabs his phone as he exits the cruiser, and Mike eventually kills Hyde. Okay. Realizing Steve is seriously injured, Mike fabricates a tourniquet, and Rosie arrives at the restaurant area and identifies Hyde as a mercenary. The backup team attempted to evacuate Steve and Mike. They're applying first aid. First aid kit is taken out. Everybody's trying to save and provide Steve and Mike with some first aid. Inside the bank, though, Luke uses a .50 caliber rifle to shoot Mike, but he misses, and two other officers are killed at that point. Okay? Now remember, Luke is Nicolas Cage's son, so he is taking a shot, if you will, quote unquote, at his dad. Just a little trivia there. So Lisa learns of the restaurant explosion and gets Steve's voicemail. Steve gets Kenny to record a farewell message on his phone for his mother in the process. The backup team reaches their colleagues, moving Steve. They become separated from Kenny, who hides out in a park blazer. His phone dies, and Kenny then looks for another battery, finally finds a way that he can hijack a charger. So then we have an EMT that assesses Steve. Hanson returns with a seriously wounded Jacob, and Mike notifies Ken that Ken is missing. Starting a search with Hanson, Mike receives a call from Lisa and prepares her for the bad news. Lisa arrives at the ER and questions the now badly conscious Jacob, who says Mike is still on the scene looking for the ride-along kid, which is Kenny. Now remember, Lisa is Mike's daughter and Steve's wife, which is Steve. Steve and Kenny Mike and Steve are partners. Okay, so just want to make sure everybody's following along. Rosie then arrives at the command center to witness Mike shouting out that his dead son has a child on the way. Horse finalizes the breach. Mike and Hanson head for the parking lot to locate and rescue Kenny. The SWAT team arrives and Trey orders a hostage out. Now safe, hostage reveals something in her pocket. Horse identified another IED, and dies selfishly protecting the hostages. As you can imagine, the SWAT team begin their breach, but they are repelled. Rob's exit first, firing to cover his escape, but he gets killed. Luke is killed at the bank door, and Trey approaches Mike, firing wildly. Hanson is also killed. Mike is wounded and has Trey raise his weapon to kill Mike. Kenny uses Hanson's side arm to shoot Trey, and Rosie appears and shoots Trey. So the bank robbers are all dead. As Mike and Kenny sit in the ambulance at the end, then we have Kenny's mother, Shawnee, arrives and hugs her son. Lisa, Mike's daughter, arrives and embraces her father. Okay. 1 year later, then we see Mike arrives home after a run. He is greeted with shouts of happy birthday. Among his well-wishers are Jacob, Steve, and Mike's granddaughter. Stepping towards his visitors, Mike asks Kenny to take some new pics at the end of the film. Okay, so that's kind of a quick overview of the movie 211. Again, 211 meaning that there is a robbery in progress. Here's my thoughts. Anytime that you have a star, such as Nicolas Cage, saying that he or just anyone that doesn't enjoy the final cut of the movie, before I had even read, before I had even kind of seen the scenes, or the movie, I was doing a little research and I heard that about Nicolas Cage, and I wish I had seen the movie first before doing my research of some of the trivia and stuff to get prepped for the movie, because I automatically went negative on the film, thinking that if Nicolas Cage didn't enjoy it, how was I going to enjoy it? Somebody that was actually acting in the film was disappointed. And I'd have to say that my bias throughout the film carried through in that. And so if I have one thing that I wish I would have done differently would be definitely to, I would have seen the movie first before I did my research. Having said that, I would also say on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being absolute outstanding, 1 being terrible, I would give this a 5. Even from the beginning, it just didn't feel right. It really felt like a B movie instead of an A movie, having a big star like Nicolas Cage. And then when I found out that they couldn't even get the spelling right, vice principal was spelled incorrectly. I just get a bad feeling about this movie, and it didn't really put me in good a mindset to review it or to watch it. So having said that, I probably would have given it a much lower review, but out of fairness to the movie and my own bias, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Now, when I went out after watching the film, I went out to Rotten Tomatoes and some other sites, And I will tell you that it's very consistent across the board that most people are saying that they agree with Nicolas Cage. It wasn't one of the best movies out there. And most of them are giving it anywhere between a 4 and a 5. I'm going to give it, like I said, a 5, give it the benefit of the doubt because of my biases coming into it. But it didn't feel like a good movie. Some of the dialogue I thought was a little cheesy. And overall, I just thought that it was just real. It wasn't very realistic, even though it was based on or loosely based on a true story. I just didn't get the feel that this film did it for me. It just wasn't developed as good as it could have been. I think there's a script here, but the script and the movie that I saw didn't do it justice, and it could have been done a lot better. Um, Again, you got somebody like Nicolas Cage, and when they walk away saying that they didn't enjoy it, it does beg the question of, could this been done a little bit better? Could the writing been a better? Absolutely, I felt, and I also just thought that the direction could have been done just a little bit better as well in the film. It just could have been a lot tighter in terms of that. And it's probably why that it really didn't get any release here in the United States, that it went straight to DVD and Blu-ray instead of getting its teeth in the theater. So overall, a 5 out of 10. I think it could have been a lot better in terms of that. Not only the photography, the filming, but also the dialogue and the script could have been a lot stronger. And so at the end of the day, I'm going to give this film a 5 out of 10, even though it's got a great actor such as Nicolas Cage. Just didn't really see it in this film in terms of that. So I want to thank you for listening to this episode of The Complete Works. You can find more of The Complete Works on film-book.com. Again, that's film-book.com. Just search for Doug Hess or The Complete Works. You can also find me on Twitter at HessDoug14. My Twitter handle, again, is HessDoug14 out there. If you listen to this podcast on iTunes or another podcast service, please rate and review this episode. If you're listening to the podcast on the YouTube channel, FilmBook Podcast, please like our video, subscribe to our channel, and leave us a comment in the comment section. We'd love to hear that and be able to respond back to you. So tune in next time when I review and analyze the next Nicolas Cage film. I want to thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.